After all the heartbreaks and disappointments, you finally found the person you're supposed to be with. That was me. I was convinced I had hit the jackpot, not just in life, but in love. My wife, let's call her Sarah, was everything I had ever wanted. She was charming, attentive, and had this way of making me feel like I was the center of her world. It was intoxicating. You know how people say love blinds you? Well, I wasn't just blind, I was willfully ignorant, wrapped in a cocoon of blissful naivety. She had me. Hook, line, and sinker. I had inherited a substantial amount from my family, not absurd billionaire money, but enough to ensure I'd never have to worry about financial stability. Sarah never acted overly interested in it. In fact, she played the cool girl role so well, always saying things like, "Money doesn't matter to me. I'd be happy living in a tiny apartment as long as I have you." And I ate it up. Of course, I wanted to believe that was true. Because if you strip away all the cynicism of the world, don't we all just want to be loved for who we are, not for what we have? Looking back, I feel like a fool. The signs were always there. The way she never really talked about her financial struggles but was always surprisingly on top of things. The way she subtly nudged me into getting joint accounts, not by demanding but by suggesting little things, like, "It's just easier this way. Babe. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine, right?" It all felt so natural, so right. I thought I had it all figured out. A beautiful wife, a comfortable life, and a future that seemed set in stone. But I didn't know. I didn't know that beneath that sweet, affectionate exterior lurked something else entirely. Something colder. Calculated. I didn't realize that, to her, I wasn't a husband, I was an investment. It wasn't until much later that I started piecing things together, long after the ink on the marriage certificate had dried. But by then, she had already started working on her real plan. And the scariest part? She was so good at it, so effortlessly convincing, that I had no idea I was just a pawn in her game. I thought I was set for life. Turns out, I was just set up. They say love makes you blind, but what they don't tell you is that it also makes you stupid. When you believe you've found the one, you start excusing things, brushing off red flags like they are just harmless quirks. That's what I did. For years I played the fool, completely unaware that the woman I shared my life with wasn't my partner, she was my predator. It started subtly, almost innocently. Sarah had never cared about money before, or so I thought. She would always downplay its importance, claiming she'd rather be poor and in love than rich and miserable. And yet, one day, out of nowhere, she started asking about my inheritance. At first, it was casual. "Hey babe, how does inheritance even work? Do you have to pay taxes on it?" She laughed when she asked, twirling her hair like it was just some random thought that had popped into her head. I didn't think much of it. I answered as best I could, telling her it depended on the state, the amount, the legal structure of the will. She nodded along, making little hum sounds, as if she was just idly curious. But the questions didn't stop. A week later, if something ever happened to you, how does that money get passed down? Like, would I have to deal with a bunch of legal stuff? A few days after that, we should really look into estate planning. Just in case. It's smart to be prepared. And then came the sweet talk. Compliments, affection, an almost exaggerated level of attention. She would run her fingers through my hair, look into my eyes, and say things like, "You've given me such a wonderful life. I don't know what I'd do without you." And God, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was just a phase, that she was just being a responsible adult who cared about our future, but something in my gut twisted every time she brought it up. It didn't feel right. It felt rehearsed. Then, the real nightmare began. One night, I came home earlier than expected. Sarah was on the phone, pacing in the kitchen, her voice low but urgent. I was about to call out to her when I heard my name. "Yeah, another year and it's all set. He has no clue." The second the 5-year mark hits, I'll file for divorce, take my share, and we'll be golden. I froze. No, he won't fight it. He's too nice. He'll just think things didn't work out. And even if he does fight, legally, I'll be entitled to half. The inheritance laws work in my favor. I couldn't breathe. My skin went cold, my fingers numb. It was like my brain refused to process what I was hearing. This wasn't just a fleeting thought or a misunderstanding. This was a plan. A calculated plan to milk me for everything I was worth. My wife, the woman I loved, had never loved me back. I don't know how long I stood there, listening to her plot my financial execution with the casual ease of someone ordering coffee. I barely remember walking away, locking myself in the bathroom just to keep myself from screaming. For years, 4 years of my life, wasted on a lie. I sat on the cold tile floor, staring at nothing, as the weight of it all crushed me. Every kiss, every hug, every whispered "I love you" was a fraud. I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion, one designed to keep me compliant until the day she could legally rip me apart. I should have been angry. But all I felt was empty. Like I wasn't even a person anymore, just an account balance she was waiting to cash out. I don't remember how long I sat there on the bathroom floor that night. Time lost all meaning. I felt like I was outside my own body, watching my life collapse in slow motion. But eventually, something inside me hardened. The sadness didn't last. It couldn't. Not when it was slowly being burned away by something stronger. Disgust. Not just at her, but at me. How could I have been this blind? How could I have let someone worm their way so deeply into my life, my heart, my trust, only for them to sharpen a knife behind my back? I replayed every moment in my mind, and now, with the truth exposed, I saw them for what they really were. Every kiss, every lingering touch, every whispered word of affection wasn't love. It was performance. And I had been the audience, eating up every scene like an idiot. But she didn't know that I knew, and that gave me power. So, I did what I had to do. I picked myself up, wiped my face, and walked out of that bathroom like nothing had changed. I smiled at her, kissed her forehead when she greeted me. I let her curl up next to me on the couch that night, feeling her warmth against me, knowing damn well that underneath her soft skin lurked the heart of a predator. I played along. It was harder. I thought it would be. Every time she touched me, I felt my stomach churn. Every time she told me she loved me, I had to fight the urge to recoil. When she looked at me with those big, adoring eyes, all I saw was calculation, cold, mechanical, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But I endured it. Because now, I was waiting too. And then, the shift began. She started creating problems, subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A sigh when I forgot to take out the trash. A frown when I got home late from work, even though she had never cared before. A little fight about nothing. You never listen to me, sometimes I feel like you don't even care, delivered with just the right amount of sadness to make me doubt myself. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was setting the stage. See, she couldn't just blindside me with divorce. That would look suspicious. No, she needed reasons. Something to justify why things weren't working out. Something that would make me look like the problem, so that when the time came, she could spin the narrative however she wanted. It was almost impressive how methodical she was about it. But I wasn't the same fool she married anymore. Every time she planted a seed of doubt, I watered it for her. If she wanted to play this game, I'd make sure she thought she was winning. Meanwhile, I started planning. Not just an escape. No, that would be too easy. She wanted to take me for everything I had. To humiliate me? To walk away with my money and a satisfied smirk? Not a chance. If she thought she could play me, she had no idea what was coming. The day she finally said it, I smiled. It was almost funny how rehearsed it sounded, how carefully she chose her words to make it seem like this was all so difficult for her. She sat across from me at the dinner table, hands folded, a perfectly measured sigh escaping her lips before she spoke. I don't think we're happy anymore. I nodded, stayed quiet. I love you, but I feel like we've grown apart. I think it would be best if we went our separate ways. She had the nerve to look sad, like this was painful for her. Like she hadn't been scheming this exact conversation for years. I met her eyes, and that's when I saw it, the glint, the tiny, fleeting spark of satisfaction behind her mask of regret. She thought she had won. Of course she did. In her mind, this was a done deal. The 5-year mark was right around the corner, meaning she was legally entitled to half of everything. The house. The accounts. The investments. My inheritance. She had played the long game, and now, she was ready to cash out. But I had spent months preparing for this moment. I let out a slow breath and leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression neutral. If that's what you want. Her eyes flickered with relief. She had expected more resistance, maybe an argument, a plea, anything to make her feel justified. But when none came, I could see the victory swelling in her chest. She had me right. Where she wanted me. Or so she thought. For the next few weeks, she played the role of the amicable ex. She was sweet, understanding, even comforted me when I struggled with the idea of our marriage ending. The way she touched my hand gently, gave me reassuring smiles. It was all an act, of course, meant to keep me compliant until the papers were signed. And I played my part perfectly. I let her believe she was in control. Let her think I was emotionally wrecked while she was moving on. The whole time, she was probably picturing her future, celebrating with her friends, sitting on a pile of money that she hadn't earned, laughing about how easy it had been. But what she didn't know, what she never saw coming, was that I had a trick up my sleeve. One final move that would make sure, when the dust settled, she wouldn't be the one walking away victorious. No, when the day of the divorce finally arrived, it would be me who had the last laugh. The air in the lawyer's office was crisp and sterile, the kind of atmosphere that made people sit up a little straighter, as if good posture could somehow tip legal matters in their favor. My ex-wife sat across from me, her expression carefully composed, but I could see it, the barely concealed excitement in her eyes. This was her moment. She had played the part of the grieving wife so well, stretched it out just long enough to reach the 5-year mark, and now she was ready to collect her winnings. She had her lawyer by her side, a man with the look of someone who had done this 1,000 times and expected nothing less than a clean, profitable split. And I just sat there, calm, silent, waiting. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading out the terms of the divorce. As per the division of assets, my client is entitled to half of the shared marital property, as well as half of the inheritance funds accumulated during the course of the marriage. I didn't react. I just glanced over at her. She wasn't even looking at me, her eyes were fixed forward, as if she had already moved on from this moment. She was already spending the money. Then, my lawyer spoke. Actually, my client no longer holds those assets in his name. A pause. A small crease appeared between her brows, barely perceptible, but I caught it. Her lawyer frowned. Excuse me? My lawyer leaned forward, hands folded neatly on the table. All major assets, including inheritance funds, were transferred into an irrevocable trust nearly a year ago. My client is a member of that trust, but he does not legally own the assets. As per the terms of the trust, the beneficiary is not subject to asset division in a divorce settlement. Then, what? Sarah finally turned to me, her eyes wide now, her entire demeanor shifting. The controlled mask she had worn so well cracked right down the middle. That's not possible, she snapped, whipping her head back toward her lawyer. Tell them that's not possible. Her lawyer, who up until now had been supremely confident, suddenly looked uneasy. Legally speaking, if the assets were moved into a protected trust prior to the divorce proceedings, then they are not considered marital property, he admitted, flipping through the documents as if he had somehow missed something. She turned back to me, her face flushed with something between rage and panic. You can't do that. That's my money too. We were married. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Then I smiled. No, Sarah. We were married. past tense. And my inheritance was never ours. It was mine. Her face twisted, fury replacing shock. You son of a... I held up a hand. Careful, I murmured, my voice calm. We wouldn't want to make a scene, would we? Her hands clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palm. She looked at her lawyer, expecting him to fix this, to find some loophole, some argument, but there was nothing. She had played the game well, but I had played it better. For the first time in our marriage, I was the one in control. She seethed, shaking her head. You planned this? I didn't deny it. I just gave her the coldest, slowest smile she had ever seen and said, enjoy your half of nothing.